Thank you, Coop. Thank you. Very happy to be here. Excuse me. For those that are on and that are that are on camera, and we certainly love seeing people's smiling faces. If you could just give me a quick thumbs up that you can see the slide, you should be able to see a QR code. All right, great. Now we invite you to utilize your phone, snap a picture of that QR code. We're going to try a little something different this afternoon in the sense that we'll give you an opportunity to engage with the slide presentation. So if you cannot do it through your QR code, we'll also invite you to check out the chat. You'll see the URL that'll have today's presentation. All right, so we'll give another moment for that. I'll also drop it one more time in the chat for those that have joined late. And with that, we are going to jump in. All right, so welcome to Solidify the first 5 minutes of your sales call. That is our topic for this afternoon. And as Coop mentioned, I am Dave Fisher. I am joined by my colleague, Susan Villamina, and I'll be taking you through this session. Just to set some quick ground rules. This is a training session. All right, so we're going to get into this shortly, but my goal is to give you a lot of actionable things that you could put into practice. Now, in the spirit of full transparency, we'll give you an opportunity at the end, should you decide you want to connect with us further. And for those that do stay until the end, we're also going to be giving out a couple of prizes. All right, so there's certainly an incentive to stay till the end, hopefully because you're getting great information, but also we're going to be giving you some great content as well. So to make sure we get the most out of this learning experience, we're virtual and it's our new world. And although we do training in person, the bulk of our delivery, given the current environment, has been virtual. Over the past 2 years, we have found that these make for really good experiences. So first and foremost, if you're able to turn your email to offline, treat this as this is a time period that you are investing in your own professional development. And so if you can turn off your email, that will remove some distractions. As Coop mentioned, we love to see the smiling faces, so please turn your cameras on. And we're going to give you a lot of opportunities to participate. So you could jump into the chat. We utilize this platform called AHA Slides. Again, I will put the URL into the chat. You could log on to that through either your laptop, through your phone, smart device. And then we love also if people come off mute. Now, if you have a preferred way that you like to be called, please rename yourself. You'll just click on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom square. And then, of course, if you have a preferred pronoun, please include that as well. Now, like we do with all of our training sessions, we want our clients to get tangible things that they take away from the sessions. So at the very end, we're going to ask you to give us at least one thing that you took away from the session. So if all that sounds good, please give us a +1 in the chat. Awesome to see. Okay. All right. So let's set the stage. All right. Let's set the stage. So let me talk about the context in which we'll be delivering the training. And it's also probably a good time for me to talk a little bit about Sandler. So what is Sandler? Sandler is essentially, it's a sales methodology. It's a sales framework. It is a process, but we really like to say it's a language that we give our clients so that they can better manage the interactions that they have with their prospects and clients. And for us to be successful, for our clients to be successful, our clients need an opportunity to put the Sandler principles and techniques into practice. Now, let's just set the stage for what I want to go through. Let's think about when I say the first 5 minutes of the sales call, all right, we're going to treat it as you've been reaching out to a prospective client. And it's that first conversation that you're having with somebody. Now, I recognize that there may be others on the call that may be doing account management, and perhaps you're calling on people that you are familiar with. So while we won't be touching on those types of calls per se, I think that if you could make the leap, you'll be able to apply a lot of the techniques to your environment as well. All right, and then the last thing I'll say is we're going to go through a lot of technique. We're going to hopefully have some time at the end for you to answer questions. But if anything pops up throughout the session, by all means, please put it into the chat. So let's start off with a key philosophy, a key framework of Sandler, something that we utilize a lot. We refer to it as the success triangle. And essentially what it means is that your success, one's success, is the convergence of the three things, the 3 points of the triangle that you see in front of you, right? So there's your attitude, which I like to think about as mindset and beliefs. There's the behavior, right? These are the things that we do, the things we have the most control of. And really what drives behavior is having goals and, of course, a plan to achieve those goals. And then in the other corner, you see strategies and tactics. And a lot of people come to Sandler because they really like our technique. But we like to say that people stay with Sandler because of what we do in terms of helping them build really good behaviors and shaping their mindset. All right, so here's your first opportunity to interact with the AHA slides. And here's where you utilize your phone or your smart device. I want you to think about the 3 points of the triangle: attitude, technique, behavior. All right, and I want you to rank them according to what you believe is most important to least important. So if, for example, you think it's technique, behavior, attitude, right? Enter that into your phone or smart device. Be curious to get a sense from the group as to what you think is most important to third most important. All right. So looks like everybody got some really good sleep last night. Coming out of the gate strong here with the answer. All right. Now somebody made a comment that they are all important, and that is true. That is 100% true. They are all important. However, if we want to look at this as the medal system in the Olympics, gold medal goes to attitude, silver goes to behavior, all right, and bronze goes to technique. So really attitude, your mindset, your beliefs is everything. All right. Now, I think you could make an argument for why each one is important. But for the purposes of today, we're going to start with attitude. We're going to start with mindset. And even before the call starts, we're talking about the first 5 minutes of the call. I'd like to even have you think about before the call starts. So the next thing I want you to think about is this. It's 2 minutes before the start of the sales call. Again, using the AHA slides, using your phone, list a couple of emotions that you're feeling. All right, I really appreciate the candor. I do. A lot of you touched on the emotion of being anxious and nervous. And I can tell you that I made my first sales call at the age of 22. I had my last sales call yesterday, and there is still a little part of me that gets nervous. In fact, the day I stop getting nervous is the day I know that I need to stop doing sales. I think it's only natural for you to have a degree of nervousness and anxiety. All right. And some of you mentioned the flip side of it, right? Excited. We're excited at the opportunity. I mean, we've been doing all this prospecting, and now somebody's raised their hand and they want to meet with us. So certainly exciting as well. So what I want to have you think about, right, is what is the mindset that you're taking into the calls? And I'm going to share with you 4 mindsets that we train our clients on. One in particular I'm going to highlight that's really worked out well for me. In fact, I'm just going to add in curiosity. I love that, crushing it. So all really important emotions. But let's think about the mindset we want to have going into the call. The first one I want you to just think about is it's just a conversation. Okay. I mean, when you want to think about this, it is a small conversation. And from there, we'll see if we can get this into a longer conversation. Now, somebody mentioned fear of failure. And I think that it's important that you understand really the environment that we're playing in. A no is perfectly fine. No doesn't necessarily mean failure. If you think about how many people you talk to versus how many people you do business with, right? The numbers support that the people you talk to is way greater than the people that you do business with. So chances are this is going to be a no. To me, I view failure on a sales call as when somebody is a no and you should have known it way sooner, but you don't realize it until 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line. That to me is a failure. But if you get a no on an initial sales call, I think that's okay. Because if you have an abundance mindset, which is in that lower right hand corner, you could just simply say, some will, some won't. So what? Next. Hopefully, you have an abundance mindset. Now, the last thing I want to touch on, and it's the one that I probably keep top of mind, and I think this will help for those of you that listed excitement, right? Or if you're competitive and you want to make the sale. Think about this. My role, all right, in this conversation is to help you, the buyer, make the best informed decision possible, whether that's to go with my service, to go with a competitor, or to do nothing at all. Now, I know that that's a little bit hard to do if you're in this competitive mindset. But if you can adopt that mindset, what it will do is it'll prevent you from getting overly excited in front of the buyer. So I like to say that you want to stay emotionally detached. But if you could really go in there with a mindset of, look, my goal is to help this person make the best informed decision possible, and it truly shows, that's where your buyers will look at you as somebody who's credible, somebody that they can trust. So that's the first place I just want you to think about, right? What is the frame of mind I have going into the call? So now let's talk about behavior, right? That's the second part of the triangle. And as I said with behavior, we always want to think about goals. Goals is the linchpin to behavior. So these are some goals for the call. All right. What we want to do is we want to create what's known as mutual control. And we'll explain what we mean by that. And we want to create predictability. We also want to disarm potential discomfort. Now let's think about this. You mentioned a whole bunch of negative emotions when I had you fill out that last slide. Nervous, anxious, right? Fear of failure, right? Now think about how your buyer is feeling, right? They get on the call with, at that moment, you're a salesperson, right? Chances are they're not having positive emotions either. And you could put this to the test. Anytime you walk into a big box store like a Staples or a Best Buy, salesperson sees you walk in, they say, "Can I help you?" Chances are we all say some version of, "No, thanks, I'm just looking." The reason we're doing that is because we're already tense, and there's a lot of negative things about salespeople that have surfaced over the years, no fault to anybody here, but people are just inherently uncomfortable when they're in this environment. Now, the other goal, really important, is we utilize this opportunity to identify pain points of our buyer. And the last goal is to determine whether or not it makes sense to continue the discussion. So those are the goals of the call, right? And from a behavior standpoint, think about those things. I want to really level the playing field in terms of mutual control. I want to disarm any tension that may be out there. I want to identify their pain points. And then from there, I want to see, does it make sense to continue this discussion? All right. Now, I know you probably came here for technique. So now we're going to get into technique. All right. And so what I've invited Coop to do is I invited Coop to he's going to play a prospect. And I'm going to do my best to be a salesperson. So Coop is a prospect, and he decided it made sense to set up some time. And I'm going to talk about now keeping these goals in mind, keeping those mindsets top of mind. Let's now get into technique. And so I will demonstrate how to set up the beginning of the call. All right. And then we'll unpack it and I'll show you what we did in terms of labeling each of the steps. But here's what I invite you to do. I want you to just, as we're going through this back and forth, I want you to just put some observations that you may have in the chat. Okay. Observations of the interaction. Think about it as if you were on the receiving end of this as the buyer. How might you feel? And like I said, we'll unpack it. Okay. So for the purposes of this, and I know that this is what I call we're in a training environment. So it may not exactly go like this, but let's just say that Coop has agreed to get on a 30-minute call with me. It's our first call, right? He saw some information over a couple of emails and he's interested in learning more. Okay. So we have a little bit of an exchange. I'm going to skip over the pleasantries. There are certain people you'll talk to, and you will be able to gauge when you start the small talk. There are some people that need that space to have small talk. Give it to them, even if you're not a small talk person. And conversely, you may be a person that loves small talk, but if you're on the phone with somebody that doesn't, then we don't do small talk. All right. So I know Coop personally, and I can tell he's a small talk kind of guy. So we had a little bit of small talk, and then I'll transition. I'll say, Coop, thanks for jumping on. I appreciate you joining the call. Before we dive in, I believe we set aside about 30 minutes. Does that still work for you?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I got 30 minutes carved out for us today. Yep.
Okay, great. So perhaps you could share, what is it that you were hoping to get out of our discussion?
Well, in looking at the emails that have come through, in the past, day or so or the past week, it seems like you work with a lot of businesses in providing lead generation, and they're setting up appointments and meetings. And right now, our team, just to be very candid, we're just not having enough upfront interactions. They're just cold calling, and we can close deals, but we just don't have enough deals to close. So we're lacking opportunities.
Okay, great. So lacking opportunities, team is just cold calling. Anything else?
I just want to be one of those clients that gets, the 30 to 40 upfront meetings in a month and closes more deals at scale. I know that there's things that we're not leveraging. You see Zoom Info out there, you see Apollo and Seamless and SharpSpring. You see a lot of players using technology and marketing automations to create higher levels of success and outcomes. And I just think we're doing things in old school kind of way. And I want to try to adopt into the future or what's working currently.
Okay. And not unusual to hear that. So again, happy to discuss those things. On my end, Coop, I was just hoping to learn a little bit more about your sales team. You mentioned that they're doing some cold calling, so I'd certainly love to hear a little bit about what's working. So, okay, if I ask you some questions around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Now, in my experience, I find that by the time we get to the end of the discussion, I think you'll have a good sense as to whether or not this is going to be a fit for your team. And if it's not, totally fine. If you do get the sense that there's a fit, then what we would do is we would just set some time up at the end of this call to have another meeting to have a broader discussion. How does that work?
Yeah, no, that sounds fair. That sounds fair.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. All right. So that was the technique part. And what I invite you to do in the chat, anything you heard, what did you observe? If you were on the receiving end of that, tell me how you're feeling. Just want to capture that. And like I said, use the chat, not AHA slides, to share some thoughts on the back and forth.
The other thing we could be open to is, having people unmute themselves just to share their observations and speak with us. But I see some good things coming in the chat, so that works too.
All right. All right. So I see Steve Garrison. I take it, Steve, you're familiar with Sandler.
Indeed.
All right. Okay. So So that was, as Steve pointed out, we have a technique for it. We refer to it as an upfront contract. It also may be known as an upfront agreement. And so Kristen from Unite Us, and Kristen's gone through Sandler as well. So she also recognized an upfront contract and normalizing Michael's feelings. Okay, great. Christian Roberts mentioned took leadership of the call from the beginning. Now, I'll just take that a little bit further. So leadership, probably you could also say, is control. So yes, I definitely took control because I was outlining the terms. Coop, how in control did you feel though, as you were listening to everything?
I felt like I was just going along for a ride, and like you were just listening to my thoughts, my emotions, my frustrations, my pains. And obviously it's different because we do know each other, but I'd feel if I was just a regular prospect that there was no pressure, that you made it a very welcoming, warming type of atmosphere for us just to have a normal conversation. Because at times I think there's so much pressure and anxiety built up. You'd be like, I got to have everything ready for this one call. It's a dance that happens way more than just for the first 5 minutes. But how you approach the first 5 minutes will determine very likely the outcomes that you have down the road. So I like that you just made me feel comfortable.
Okay, so this is the art, what we call, of mutual control. Um, as the seller, right, I am in control because I'm outlining the parameters, which I will go over. But from the receiving end of it, right, the buyer is feeling in control because at the end of this, it's ultimately their decision. And I've also given space to say that if we decide it doesn't make sense, it's perfectly fine. Right. So I think that the fear that sometimes buyers have is that this is going to be pressure. So we want to alleviate that. All right. Now, another comment that came in, um, Matthew mentioned this, right, is what we want to also let people know is what they can expect at the end of the call, right? And basically, all I told Coop is that we're going to set up a broader conversation. What I didn't tell Coop is, at the end of the call, what I hope to do is get your credit card number and your ACH number for your bank. All we're going to agree to is whether or not it makes sense to have a broader discussion. Now, I just want to offer one thing here, because some of you may be in a situation where you could have a one call close. I recognize that. So that whatever that next step is, you could swap that out, what that next step is for your world. Like, I know some people will say purpose of this call is for us to get to know one another, get the sense to see is whether or not what we offer fits into your workflow. If we do get a sense that there are synergies, the next step would be for us to schedule a demo. That could be a good next step. Whatever that next step is, let people know in the beginning, because chances are people don't know how to buy what you sell. So if you can show them a path to buying, right, again, you are making them more comfortable. I don't know of any prospect that has gotten on a call and started off saying, gee, Dave, let me tell you right now, I'm kind of an idiot. I have no clue how to buy sales training. And boy, if I screw this one up, my ass is on the line. So can you help me? Nobody says that, right? What people say is they want to appear like they're in control. They want to appear like they know everything. But chances are they don't know how to buy what you sell. All right. And then lastly, Lisa mentioned, right, at the end of the call, all right, I mentioned you'll get a good sense as to whether or not this is a good fit. So let's talk about what exactly we did. All right. And there it is. So as some of you pointed out, as Steve pointed out, as Kristen pointed out, we refer to this as an upfront contract or an upfront agreement. And there are elements to the upfront contract. So there's that first part, there's an appreciation, right? Appreciate you getting on the call. And then there's a time confirmation. Now, Coop is super nice. Now, I'm going to also share with you, like, you're all sitting here saying, yeah, this is great, Dave, but I don't know if I have people that are as nice as Coop. So I'm going to give you along the way the variations of it. Some people may say, well, no, I'm not good for 30, but I have 20. That's fine. It's better for you to know now in the beginning than to find out 20 minutes in that they had to jump when you thought that they had 30. All right. I start off with their agenda. I always do that. And as was pointed out in the chat, this is all about them. This is all about them. Now, you may want to flip your agenda with their agenda, depending upon how receptive they were to the meeting. So you may say, thanks for getting on. Usually on these calls, we cover A, B, and C. However, is there anything else that you'd like to cover? So we do this for a couple of reasons, right? We put them first, ask for their agenda. The other reason we're asking for their agenda, and Coop was really good about this, is we want to see if we can get anything that sounds like pain. Because one of the goals of the call is to, right, have a discussion about their pain. So Coop was good. Coop gave me a lot of pain that I could work with, right? So now he gives me that. Once I finish with my upfront contract, now I can start digging a little bit deeper into his pain points. What I also did is I asked him permission to ask questions. Sandler is a question-based sales methodology. It's a discovery-based approach to selling. And the way we get people to discover something is through really good questions. But sometimes if you don't set that up right and you just launch into questions, people might not be comfortable with that. So I got permission to ask questions. And then finally, we talked about outcomes. We talked about the outcomes at the beginning of the call. And so when you think about it, it's a little bit of heavy lifting that we're doing in the first 2 minutes so that the rest of the time is that much easier. All right. So that's the example of the technique, right? That's the upfront contract. Now let's talk a little bit more about, again, why we're doing this, right? So we want to avoid this arm wrestle. The arm wrestle is this. People don't want to be sold. If you've ever read the little, I think it's called the Little Red Book of Selling by Lee Gittimer, he says he's actually, he patented the line, people love to buy, they hate to be sold. Right? People love to buy, they hate to be sold. And on the other side of it, as salespeople, right, we want to make the sale. We want to make the sale because, hey, and I'm not ashamed to say it, we like making money. We want to help people and we're competitive. So what we're doing is we're avoiding this and we're making it a mutual exchange. The other thing we're also doing is we're creating what's known as equal business stature. So sometimes what happens is we may go into these calls thinking that they're up here because they're the buyer and they have money, and I'm down here and I'm the lowly salesperson. And that's not true, right? It is exchange of two equals. So now let's talk about why this works, right? Why this works is it's just a simple rule. And Sandler has a lot of these rules, but the rule I want to highlight here is that people won't get upset with you if they agree in advance as to what's going to happen next. And you could apply this rule to your entire life. I mean, I can tell you how many arguments I must have gotten into because I had this thing known as mutual mystification. I thought one thing, they thought the other. So real simple. If people agree in advance as to what's going to happen next, they'll be fine with it. If we didn't discuss time and Coop has got to leave at 20 minutes, and I'm like, no, stay on 10 more minutes. He didn't agree to that. So that's the notion behind the why of an upfront contract. All right, so that's the first part, right? We're going to think about how do we set the tone. And if you can get really good at delivering upfront contracts, then that's an opportunity for you to really set the stage for your call. But then there's this other thing that could happen. All right, you can still do an upfront contract, all right, but you could find yourself in what's known as premature presentation syndrome. And this is where all of a sudden, you start doing the word vomit. This is where you start launching into case studies, so on and so forth. We like to say in Sandler, the prospect that is listening is no prospect at all. What we really need to do in this next step is we have to figure out, right, what is compelling to them. So another Sandler rule is that people buy emotionally and they justify the decision intellectually. Another way you could think about this is people do not buy features and benefits. So if you're leading with features and benefits, I'm going to just challenge that thought and have you flip that. Say, how can I start to uncover, all right, the pain of my buyer? And if you haven't heard that term before, I have a feeling most of you have. Pain is a compelling, emotional, personal reason for somebody to do something different, right? If people are in enough pain, they will get out of their comfort zone and they will make that change. And ultimately, that's what we really sell, right? We sell change. So the upfront contract, right, is a really good strategy for you to start to uncover what we refer to as pain indicators. Pain indicators are the start of a conversation. In the example that I did with Coop gave a couple of pain indicators. He said that he mentioned that they're not taking advantage of some other technology, that they're not getting enough meetings. All right, he gave me some pain indicators. Now, these are examples of pain indicators in our world. All right. These are things that when I ask somebody what they want to get out of a meeting, if they're a prospect for ours, they may say one of these things. So it's important that you understand pain indicators so that you can listen for them. When you ask people what you want to get out of the call, really you should be listening for any sort of a pain indicator. Now let's talk about what actually happens. Because again, Coop was a really, really good prospect. Thank you, Coop. But I have had many, many calls where I say to somebody, thanks for getting on. If we go the 30 minutes, are you good for it? Great. What is it that you're hoping to get out of today's discussion? And they say, I just want to hear what you do. I'm just curious. Want to hear about your pricing. All right. Does any of that sound like pain? Right? None of that sounds like pain. And if I don't flip the script there, what could happen is I could wind up in premature presentation syndrome. So I know that probably most of your calls, you'll ask people, what would you like to get out of this? They'll say, yeah, well, your email sounded interesting. You were always open to new ideas. Never hurts to talk to somebody else. And you're thinking to yourself, that's not pain. So what do I do? So the strategy here is suggest the pain. Suggest the pain. If they don't bring up pain and they say, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your company? All right. Then the next couple of minutes of the call is for you to think about, how do I suggest the pain? Good call. They give you pain when you ask what they want to get out of the call. Easy. If they give you that, cards close to the vest, I'm not telling you too much, and they give you surface or what I call intellectual BS, what we have to do is we have to get them to identify potential pain points. So the way we do that is through what we call a third party story. All right. So, well, listen, I don't really have anything compelling, but why don't you tell me about Sandler? Sure, happy to tell you about Sandler. We're a sales and sales management training organization. We typically work with business owners and entrepreneurs who are concerned with sales cycles that seem to be getting longer and longer. We have others that tell us that they're frustrated with prospects that are ghosting them once they send a proposal. And I'd say probably another type of client that we work with are those that are really worried that they're giving up margins because they're feeling a lot of pressure to discount in order to win the business. Now, just to make sure we're focusing the conversation into something that's relevant, which, if any of these, would you want to talk about? And what I'm hoping to do there is for them to say, well, actually, that second one. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm suggesting the pain by using customer voice, also known as third-party reference. I'm using emotional words. We call these pain indicators. And I'm basically coming up with a menu. Now, if you notice the top of that, we typically work with business owners and entrepreneurs. Well, if I'm on the phone with somebody that's a chief revenue officer, I'll just switch it out. All right. We also refer to this in terms of our 30-second commercial. So what are we doing here? We're telling a little bit about ourselves, but notice what I didn't say. I didn't say, sure, well, let me tell you about Sandler. In fact, let me pull up the PDF here. Let me tell you about the different industries we've been in. Let me tell you about our training programs. Let me tell you about our world-class methodology. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, Kristen mentioned this in the chat, Kristen Hunter, right? There's also a little bit of psychology here. It's called normalizing. So if I just said, why don't you tell me your pain? I can assure you that the response will be, I don't have any. when I tell them these are other people that we help and these are issues they are going through, right? That's known as normalizing. So somebody who are on the receiving end of that is like, oh, other entrepreneurs or other heads of marketing or other CROs or other CFOs are having these issues. Okay, it makes them more willing to discuss them. So here's what I'm curious to know. All right, and engage with the AHA slides. I want you to list out, maybe start with one, but if you want to put more, go ahead. Come up with a pain indicator that your client may be experiencing. All right. Now, I want you to focus on their issue. And I think that this is always the challenging part. What we don't want to do is launch right into solution. Like, well, they may be experiencing this and we can help them with this. Just stay with the issue. So let's see some pain indicators that your product or service helps people with. Capture that in the slides. All right. So enrollment numbers are dropping. I'm curious if the person who put I'm not close enough to the 50-yard line, if you could come off mute, I'd just be curious to hear a little bit more about that. So who said I'm not close enough to the 50-yard line? Person who said that, I'm not close enough to the 50-yard line. If you're able to come off mute, I just had a follow-up question.
That'd be me. That'd be Ryan.
All right. So Ryan, is this do you sell tickets or is that an analogy for something else?
No, we sell tickets. Yep.
Okay, got it. All right. So I want you to think about, you take that, which is a good pain indicator, right? Add in some emotional words.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work with people who, they're super excited to come to the game. In fact, they don't really get a lot of opportunities, but they find that whatever service they're using, they get extremely annoyed because they're nowhere near the 50-yard line. All right. Mm-hmm. So I know that that's a lot to type in the chat, but I just wanted to use that as an example. Like, really embellish on these, because the way you think about it, you're just creating a story. And selling is acting. Selling is acting. So really just think about your pain indicators. How do you add in some of those emotional words? How do you think about talking about the impact as well? Like, for example, we have a lot of clients who are really concerned about overall security exposure to data. And as a result, X might be happening. So we refer to that as not only including the pain, but the impact of that pain. Now, if you can get really comfortable, right? If you can get really comfortable thinking up of a menu of what we refer to as pain indicators, have that ready to go, because chances are most people are not. I mean, if you're lucky, hopefully you're lucky that people give you pain indicators when you say, what prompted you to join the call, or what were you hoping to get out of today's discussion? Keep that ready for when people say, nothing in general. My friend told me I should talk to you. I'm just curious about things, right? We refer to that as the neutral buyer, and they're always the most difficult buyer to deal with. If you get that, don't panic. Just say, all right, well, let me drop my 30-second commercial or my pain indicators and see if I can get a conversation going. All right, now I'm going to invite Susan from my team because we have this discussion all the time. So Susan, let's say I drop that menu of pain indicators and I say, which, if any of these are relevant, right? If you said that to a prospect and then they said, well, none of them really resonate. What do you do then?
Well, you've got, I think you've only got really two choices. Now you may see it a little bit differently, but It's either then what is it? What else could it be? Open-ended question. And if there isn't anything, then there's really nothing to talk about, right? There's no basis for a conversation if the prospect doesn't have an issue that they want to talk about. So that's what comes to mind for me. You put me on the spot, so I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I did that on purpose. So I think
good.
that it was, I did that on purpose, right? Remember this: if somebody doesn't have pain, okay, you can't create pain that they don't have.
Right.
If somebody, and I had a call, and it was from NerdWise. I had a call last week. It went something like this: tell me what prompted you to get on the call. And this is what the person said: oh, I just like connecting with people. I find it never hurts to have a conversation. All right, now I'm thinking, okay, so this is probably not going anywhere, but I still went through with my upfront contract, and then I dropped out my menu of pain indicators. This person happened to be an architect, so I had specific pain indicators for an architect. He said, no, none of those things really. We're doing great. We're doing, and he said, but there is this one thing. There is this one thing, and he mentioned a pain that we actually couldn't solve. And I said, all right, well, I'll continue the conversation, but in my mind, this isn't an opportunity. And in the past, I would have been annoyed. Why isn't this an opportunity? Not everybody is going to have pain. Sometimes people may not feel comfortable, but if at least you planted the seed. But to Susan's point, if they don't really have any pain that your product or service can solve, then that's where you get that, hey, this is a no. And the way I ended the call was, well, look, let's keep in touch. You know what I do. Maybe those things may come up in the future. And then, hey, it doesn't hurt. I said, now that you know what I do, who's someone in your network that might be open to a conversation like this?
I think
Why does it hurt?
The uniqueness of that call that you had, Dave, which we've all had that call, was that prospect really sort of revealed themselves right out of the gate when they said, I like to connect with people. And so, but that's not always the case, right? Sometimes they just can't latch on to a pain. And if you go to end the call and then just ask one last question, it doesn't sound like I can really help with something, but before I go, can I ask you, what were you hoping, this conversation would lead to? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And sometimes they'll come up with something, but it's sort of like that one last, but the one that you had, that's, those are, you end it because you have to end it. There's not anything there. And you know what? Listen, NerdWise, as great as they are, right? They can't control people who just want to be entertained for the day.
Yep. And so again, I was able to just say, look, it wasn't an opportunity. I didn't beat myself up. It was a no, and we move on. All right, so that should take you to roughly the first 5 minutes of the call, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. So just a quick review, right? We start off with a little bit of small talk, depending upon who it is you're engaging with. We want to utilize a good upfront agreement. And depending upon what you hear from your buyer, if they give you pain when you ask them what they want to get out of the call, right? You would spend some time now digging a little bit deeper. If they don't give you pain, then you can suggest the pain in the hopes that, again, they latch onto something, in which case you'll dig a little bit deeper. So don't go to the solution mode until you really have something truly that they've identified that they're trying to fix or achieve. Because if they don't have any pain, we like to say in Sandler, no pain, no sale. All right, so we're coming up to the final 10 minutes here, and we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A. But as I mentioned to you, we are going to give you an opportunity to win some content. All right. In fact, everybody that's on this is going to get content. Coop is going to put something into the chat right now. It is a pre-call planner tool. It's a real simple, easy one-pager. In fact, this fits into the behavior category. And I'm not saying you should do this with every call, especially if it's a first time, But if you get the sense that this is a lead that's a pretty meaningful lead, you may want to invest some time just to do a little bit of pre-call planning. And this tool that's in the chat will help you to do that. It'll help you to think through how you might want to write out your upfront contract, some questions you can ask, questions they may ask of you. It'll even prompt you to look at their LinkedIn profile. So that is for everybody. And we're going to also give 2 of you an opportunity to get some more content. So we have 2 things that we'll be offering. One is the no pressure prospecting online course. It's a mini course. All right. And that's the first prize. The second prize is a Sandler book. Now, what you'll see on the slide is a lot of books, and this is a portion of all the books. I think we have about 35 different books. So if you happen to be the winner of the book, we'll send you a link so you can see all the books. You'll let us know which one you want, and then we'll send you a link so you can download the book. All right, so you're probably wondering, how are we going to pick the winners? Well, we're going to do it through AHA Slides. So what I invite you to do is enter your name. And if you want to participate in the raffle, you'll enter your name. And once we have everybody, I'll spin the wheel. And then the winner will be chosen by the magical AHA Slides wheel. So this first one is for the no pressure prospecting course. If you happen to win that, well, actually, for both winners, please include your email in the chat, and this way we could follow up with you. Sorry, I didn't clarify that. If you win, we'll ask you to put your email into the chat so that we can follow up with you.
Lisa's slides were bumped off her phone.
All right, Lisa, let me do this. I'll put up the QR code
again. It's fun to watch other people win anyway. Just I had a call come in and I had to stop and it bumped my slides off. So.
All right. Well, I'll put this QR code back
perfect.
up.
Thank you.
If you want to access it again. All right. So let's go ahead and. All right. So let's spin the wheel. All right, so Cheryl McKenna, congratulations. Please drop your email in the chat. We will send you a link to that Sandler online course. And now let's go to our second prize. Here is a chance to win the Sandler book of your choice. And we're, everyone, you get 1 prize each. So Cheryl, if you come up again, we'll have to spin a second time. All right, so here we go. All right, Jim Brazil, congratulations. So Jim, you'll be getting a link for the book, and then you'll let us know which book you want, and we'll send you the download.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Congratulations. All right, so we'll have time for a little bit of questions, but just wanted to let you know that if you'd like to connect with us further, you have our contact information. You have our emails. You also have our LinkedIn profiles. We certainly invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn. If there are any questions that you have, we understand the importance really of making the most out of those opportunities. And then lastly, you'll see on there you have our website. So here's what I'll do. Since we want to make sure that we get a a lesson learned. We will have you fill this out, but if anybody has any questions they want to drop into the chat, we could utilize the remaining time to answer any questions that come up. If not, if you don't have questions, we thank you for joining. And again, please share a key takeaway from the session before you hop off.
And David, thank you so much to you and Susan for putting on an incredible program this week. And thank you to everybody that you just came to this wonderful event and hopefully took some great key takeaways that you'll incorporate into your day-to-day sales practices. And also know that we will continue to have these 1-hour sessions at least one time every month. And that time is typically on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. And I really look forward to having David and Susan re-inspire us again as the coming weeks and months and years unfold. You guys did an incredible job.
Thank you, Coop. We appreciate the opportunity. So a couple of the lessons learned are coming in, and yeah, it's okay to hear no. It is okay to hear no. We love yeses, but I like to say an early no is good. An early no is good. You'll move on to other opportunities that will potentially be yeses. Mm-hmm. Understanding pain points. Yep, that's a big one. Big one. The better you can be at recognizing pain points and digging deeper. My belief is that's really where you make the sale. It's in your ability to understand your buyer's pain. If you can understand their problems intimately, then they will get the belief, right, that you can help them solve them. All right. All right. So another lesson learned on pain points. All right. First question gets you in the door. Next question gets you the gold. Now I'm curious. I need to hear a little bit more about that one. Who shared that one?
I shared it, but it's always good to have like an easy upfront question, something bite-sized to answer, knowing that there's going to be a second or third question to follow up. And that's where you want to get to. Some people ask the hard upfront questions initially at the door and they get it slammed in their face because it's a little bit too invasive. So the first one allows you through the door. The second one allows you to go fetch some gold. So I just always heard that philosophy and I felt I should share it because it's kind of fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And if you have any follow-up questions for us, by all means, please reach out. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. But until then, we wish you continued success, especially on those first calls. So make the most of those 5 minutes. And good selling, everyone.